that no one could have predicted or foreseen the ferocity, the violence of Yolanda. No one. And this study does not in any way predict that. In the case of Tacloban, the FCP was okay, but the location of the city, right by Cancabato Bay, was too close for comfort. It was all concentrated in one section right by the sea. We showed them this map twice, in late 2012 and in September 2013, showing how that area of the city is in a very low area prone to flooding, and how Tacloban is exposed to climate. Of the cities here, it had the highest annual rainfall. How bad was it? The average rainfall in the Philippines is about 2,400 millimeters. Nagas rainfall, Tacloban's rainfall was at 4,600 millimeters. In the scenario building exercises, the primary drivers that emerged in Naga were governance and the role of the economic sector. Surprisingly, Tacloban brought in the highest number of registered businesses, which is a good indication. But if you look at what was happening, the economy was going through a shift, what I have described in the report as a flux. Because although you are seeing ship calls, nothing like Batangas, domestic cargo, nothing like Batangas. Air cargo, surprisingly, air cargo, 6.5 million kilos. And I was wondering what that was. That was blue crab from Samar, primarily, and fish products. Air passengers, 1 million air passengers. All these figures underscore the importance of Tacloban, a continuing importance as a regional center. But if you look at the items below, look how the seaborne passengers have remained flat, foreign cargo has dropped, tourist arrivals have crashed, as have export revenues. The city has gone through a major shift, and it shows how it's important for you to look at other things. Population is up, housing is up, everything positive, 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 positive. Building permits are down. If you look at the active capacity, Region 8 has the same problem as Region 5, where functional literacy has gone down, as opposed to Angeles and Batangas, where literacy has gone up. We showed this video to the stakeholders of Tacloban on September 4, 2013, showing an overlay of the hazard map of Tacloban and the Google Earth image of the city. But it was 2 months, so it was too late. In the report, we mentioned that they had to look at zoning and land use, as Bongnes earlier mentioned, that it was important for Naga to consider the uplands because everything was concentrated down in that area, that they had to upgrade city drainage and water supply, and that the airport was a high-risk area. These were mentioned earlier, but this is something we pointed out in the study. In terms of level of vulnerability, Angeles was the lowest of the four, followed by Batangas, then Naga, and the most vulnerable was Tacloban. Darwin. The importance to be responsive to change. What are the patterns and opportunities that have come out of the 12 cities assessments that we have done with the BPI Foundation? One, that impacts are site-specific. That you can't simply design a national plan and put it together. And I know that the Climate Commission has gone all the way, taken the pains to do bottoms-up consultation and to figure out before pulling together the national climate plan. Number two, we have seen that much of the reaction has been by and large reactive. We have to be more proactive. We can't just look at relief and rehabilitation, we must look at preparedness. Number three, We live here. This is the Asian century. But there are more people that live inside that circle than outside of it. And here in the Philippines, this is how population will grow. That feeds into the next item. When you have a good weather, fairly good land, you create a migratory sink. This is Davao City. The United Nations says that the biggest impact from climate will be forced migration. This is an image taken in the belly of a C-130 in November. So, our decision has to be, is it going to be forced migration or is it going to be planned development? And I'm not talking about planned development the way Manila has been planned. I'm talking about something a lot more careful, a lot more insightful. Take a look at these graphs. These are the regions in in Luzon. The green line is NCR. You notice how NCR is headed into a plateau, population-wise. The yellow line is Region 4A. You notice how Region 4A is already higher than NCR and is continue dominating population growth. And the red line is Region 3. I earlier mentioned Region 3 is going to be overtaking NCR in 2020. Knowing, however, that Metro Manila gets its water from outside, its food from outside, its energy from outside, in fact, its labor from outside NCR. NCR is not sustainable. And therefore, if you're going to look at the management plan for NCR, you should not be looking at Metro Manila alone. You should be looking at the bundle of NCR, R3, and R4A. It is not 14 million people, it is 35 million people. That's what you should be looking at, and that's how we should be looking at urban planning, as bundles. If you were to simply look at land area, Davao comes out as the biggest city in the 12 cities we've looked at. Iloilo is number 9, and Baguio is number 11. Just remember the colors. Red is Davao, orange is Iloilo, and 11 is Baguio. Now if you look at population, Davao is still number 1, but look how Iloilo has moved up to number 5, and look how Baguio has moved up to number 7. Remember, they were down here. Whoop. Now if we look at land area and population density, look how Baguio, which was number 12, is now number 1. And look how Iloilo, which is way down, is now number 2. And look how Davao is number 11. There has to be some logic connecting the way we plan our cities in order to balance off the push-pull impacts. Clearly, cities will be areas of concentrated risk, and decentralization is something that we should actively continue to pursue. In a WWF study entitled Urban Solutions for a Living Planet, these criteria were spelled out as things that every city should look at in terms of creating a climate-smart future. Moving towards self-sufficiency in all these matters, adopting a trans-silo way of thinking with leadership that's adaptive and inclusive and allows public-private formulas to flower. We also saw that as urbanization advances, agriculture retreats, knowing that 61% of the land in the Philippines is used for food production. Whenever there is land conversion, we are reducing food production. We have to learn how to look at bundles, not just of cities, but as bundles that put together ridge to reef elements as a continuum, forest, crop, settlements, and coastal areas. Ecosystems are the new management envelope that we have to look at here, because with population moving to 140 million by 2050, we have to define land use. We have to define land use. Water. There will be major changes in the quantity and the quality and the timing of water. It is possible to manage water. There are solutions that have been adopted actually in some parts of the Philippines, such as in Santa Rosa. In many places, I'm using Santa Rosa as the example, we tend to develop along very flood-prone lines. This image of Santa Rosa could very well have been Iligan, Cagayan de Oro, Baguio, or Marikina Valley. What happens is that because we have marginalized the recharge areas and poorly managed the conveyance areas and the drainage areas, you get widespread flooding in the city center. We should actually be doing bundling of towns, stabilizing of recharge areas, detention areas, and drainage areas. The key is to look at no downtime. If you can hunker down for the storm and the next day open your windows and get back to business, that is what resilience is all about. There are many ways to achieve this, and they can be done at every scale. They can be done at catchment scale, city scale, site scale, building scale. That is another presentation altogether. There is no reason why no Filipino should have good water. We have more rain than we need. We only use 20 billion cubic meters when we have rainfall of 146 billion cubic meters a year. We lose most of the captured water to systems loss. So it's management once again. The priorities on water use should be number 1, rain, number 2, surface, last choice, ground. In the Philippines, it's the other way around. First choice is ground, 2 is surface, rainwater is 3. In the case of Cebu City, an extreme case, there are 17,000 wells in Cebu City itself, only 1,000 of which have permits. We have to look at investment in multi-source supply. A basic of all management teams is to spread the risk. We have to manage water. It broke my heart when I saw all that bottled water being shipped to the Visayas. We pay Manila Water 27 pesos per cubic meter. How much does a liter of bottled water cost? 20 pesos per liter. How many liters are there in 1 cubic meter? 1,000. You are paying 20,000 pesos per cubic meter for bottled water. This has been described by the World Bank as maladaptation. It makes no sense to do relief and spend 1,000 times more than you should be spending for water. We have to look at food. We have to learn how to sustainably produce more with less. You've seen the population figures. You know our land is not increasing. Did you know that if we just looked at the way we waste rice, we can feed 2.5 million Filipinos every year? We have this habit of leaving some food on the plate, the shy Filipino piece. Just turn our backs on things like that. We've lost our fisheries, and therefore we have to learn how to supply protein to our people. This is old school. Laguna de Bay cannot work. Why does everybody want to put a fish pen in Laguna de Bay? Because it's the cheapest place in the Philippines to grow fish. Why is it the cheapest place? Because you don't have to feed them. Why don't you have to feed them? Because that is the septic tank of Metro Manila. We have to look at self-sufficiency, at least regionally, for food supply. And here in the Philippines, if we are to look at aquaculture, there are solutions for full cycle aquaculture. Or you can do what Yem did and go on a fast. We have to look at the balanced energy mix. I know, you know, President Aquino is my president, but I don't have to agree with everything he says. And one of the things I don't agree with is this. He approved 4,500 megawatts of new coal plants. I think that was a mistake. Why? The International Energy Agency talks about how the cost of power is going to go in one direction, up, 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 especially if it's powered by fossil fuels. It will affect the cost of doing business and the cost of living, and therefore it's a political cost. When we look at the reality of base loads, rather than giving you answers, ask you 4 questions. Do we have sufficient energy? Do we control fuel prices or supply? Is that competitively priced or is it expensive? Have we eliminated brownouts? Are we going to do that for another 50 years? You answer it. We're pushing for a more balanced energy mix because local indigenous energy avoids the problems that the NGCP saw in Leyte. It also provides the basis for a more competitive regional economy. We have to look at education. This is the other pattern we saw. We have to invest in natural capital. But we have to look at education not in the number of schoolrooms we have, but in the number of brains we are able to build. And there are virtual opportunities we need to look at seriously. And the people to look at this must be people who understand what these virtual opportunities are. We have to build brains rather than simply buildings. Access has emerged very clear in this last study. These are the number of ships at sea on any given day. How many of these ports are climate smart? 80% of our trade is shipborne. What will happen to the pineapples of Cagayan de Oro and the bananas of Davao? What will happen to the oil and gas and to the cars that land in Batangas City? Have we really looked at mass transit? I want to bring you back to that photograph of August 2013, Terminal 4 of NAIA, where the water was chest deep. 166 flights were canceled that day. And I want to take you up to that photograph of the Candaba Viaduct the day after Pepeng. You will see trucks delivering vegetables to Divisoria. Let me take you back to these two short slideshows of NLEX and SLEX to remind you that we have to work on our major arteries. Because without access, you have no economy. There is an emerging threat, which we did not see in the early years, which is now becoming a reality. And that has to do with health. New diseases have emerged. Old diseases are coming back. A lot of this is really because of the disruption of natural systems. Habitats provide those defenses which protect us against the spread of disease. But human activity has changed the situation, and climate change is aggravating it, further disrupting the balance between predators and prey. Humans will obtain these diseases from a range of factors. These are some of the diseases that I'm sure many of you have heard about over the last few months, which are now either here or coming back. In short, the changes in climate and the changes in the natural systems have brought about changes in the range of infectious disease, which are now affecting public health and society. Why did I put that big rat up there? Just to remind me about Davao. Davao went through a period of very heavy rainfall. Then I get a call from the Davao Gulf Management Council saying, we're getting a rat infestation, what's going on? Whenever it rains very heavily, rats give birth within 21 days. And they start attacking the rice fields. Because they figure with a lot of rain, there's a lot of food. And they're very smart, but that's part of the change. Now, of course, we cannot blame climate change for everything. We have to look at the human footprint. How do we score in terms of the human footprint? When you look at footprint accounting, it gives you an ecological bank statement so that you know that if you're operating in deficit or not. It compares energy, carbon footprint, settlements, built up land, etc. So you look at your resource and you look how much of your resource you're using, and you try and figure out if nature can absorb our waste and generate new resources by the way we live. Globally, the Living Planet report shows that the planet is now exceeding sustainable limits by 50%. We live in the Asian century, and Asia Pacific, it has exceeded sustainable limits by 77%. Here in the Philippines, a study released just last year shows that the Philippines has exceeded sustainable limits of our country by 117%. We have to make a decision. And it's a difficult decision. Do we slow down economic growth? Or do we slow down population growth? Or do we figure out another way to do it? Metro Manila has exceeded the sustainable limits of the metropolis by 3,400%. The environment is not only the social security system of the poor.